There we go. Hello, Liz.
Hi, CL Cal.
So we're really excited about you coming to the g0v Summit in May. So could you give us a brief introduction about yourself and Public Laboratory?
Sure. Well, my name is Liz Barry. I'm also extremely excited to be coming to the g0v Summit. I work with a large open source community called the Public Laboratory for Open Technology and Science. And I also work with other types of environmental data production, like TreeKit, which is just worked with the city of New York to survey all of the urban street trees here, something that thousands of people participated in to create high quality data that now the governments and citizens can use to collaborate. Most of my work, though, is with the Public Laboratory for Open Technology and Science, and we are tackling, as a community, many different types of environmental investigations. I think the really special thing about the Public Lab community is that it's a place where people who have different sorts of expertise can interact with each other in a conversational, pleasant environment, and we actually learn from each other. We're understanding what policies are in place to manage the environment. We're looking into what is the technoscience that these policies are based on. And we actually have many people in our community doing hardware development on making research equipment so that people can conduct their own environmental investigations.
That sounds awesome. So, like, how many people are participating in Public Laboratories, like the online community for environment monitoring and discussion?
It's hard to count, but there seem to be about 10,000 people involved here. Now we don't hear from them all the time,
Sure.
and it's something we're trying to understand right now. There's among all these people, there's a community leadership group called the Organizers. And these people, they decided themselves that they wanted to become more active. And I think the distribution of these 80 people around the world is maybe a better representation of our diversity.
Well, that sounds like a huge crowd all doing awesome things. So what's the most important impact that you think the Public Laboratory and the whole community has brought?
It seems like there's a few ways to answer that question. As with any large group of people where there's a lot of projects, we're having a number of different kinds of impacts. The data collected by our tools, primarily our aerial mapping tools, using just plain old cameras to take aerial photos in visible or infrared and stitch them into maps. It seems like that kind of photographic evidence is able to have the most impact in the courts, in the media, and in just communicating with policymakers. We're working on a number of other tools, ranging from particulate matter sensing to spectroscopy to identify different types of oil. And it's not just the hardware development that's required to get these tools to work, but also understanding where into the government system of environmental management, regulation, and enforcement can that data be heard. So I think broadly, going into what it really takes to manage the environment collaboratively between citizens and government, that's a big impact area of us overall. I would also say, and I'm probably guilty a little bit to bring this point up because it's something I'm personally interested in, something I've been working on since the very early days of Public Lab getting together. But I'm very interested in how the social practices that have evolved on the internet to support the kind of massive collaborative projects like we see in open source software and knowledge production like in Wikipedia, how do we take the range and the innovative capacity of this commons-based peer production and fuse it with other well-known offline forms of social organization that are also known to generate huge social and political outcomes. So in the Western Hemisphere, we're talking about community organizing, community development corporations, building networks of stakeholders, grassroots campaigns, popular education movements. And in Public Lab, it's very interesting how our online and offline components work together. We have the online social practices that were established, you know, that you would really recognize from many other open source movements. And then you see people going out and doing research and building local campaigns in a way that you would recognize from traditional grassroots political organizing. So I'm very interested in that combination. And that's one of the real reasons I'm excited to come to the g0v Summit. I've had the opportunity over the past couple years to build more collaborations with people in mainland China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. And it has been a nonstop learning experience for me. And I'm really excited to connect with different civil sector movements in Asia, because I think, you know, the public laboratory has been primarily Western Hemisphere. And just in January, actually just a couple weeks ago, we got our first mainland China-based organizer, who I'm really excited that she's going to be coming to the g0v Summit as well. So I just think it's a huge opportunity for cultural exchange for people working in this space.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the new collaboration you're doing with the teams in China? What have they achieved, and how are the organizing work there?
There are a lot of incredible environmental activists in China. I've just been fortunate enough to have the opportunity to meet a couple of them. I first began to connect with these activists 2 years ago in January 2014 during the MAD Making a Difference conference in Hong Kong. And at that time, I met Greenovation Hub and Heshan, who introduced herself by saying, "Oh, hi, I've heard of Public Laboratory, and also we have undertaken a very small citizen science project." Well, she was very modest, come to find out that they had designed, manufactured, and distributed over 1,000 pH testing kits and held a public event along a very long river where people were sampling and uploading water quality data to a website that they also built. And at the same time, they were collecting oral histories from the older generation who remembered the rivers before the factories came. So this is work they're already doing. And if it's not obvious, let me say that is one of, although they described it as a small project, that's actually one of the largest citizen science water quality events in the world. And I'm so glad that they are getting more well known for this. We have built a collaborative relationship over the last couple years, and I was able to actually travel with them around some of the industrial pharmaceutical manufacturing sites that they are watching along with environmental journalists. Just now in January, we also traveled to rural villages where they're moving beyond research into remediation to try to deal with some drinking water issues. And so this opportunity for me to be able to travel with an engineer working on water filtration, a product designer, a photojournalist, and two civil sector environmental activist from 2 different provinces, Guangzhou and Hunan. This was really incredible, and we actually speak almost every day on WeChat, and there's a lot of projects in the works to try to bring the kind of like low cost and horizontal innovation around actually creating new tools that Public Lab is kind of known for, but bring it into the Chinese context.
So it seems like you kind of absorb these existing efforts and the amazing citizen science projects already there into the broader public laboratory community.
Well, absorb makes me feel worried that like we're like some kind of blob, like blobbing over everybody. It's really not the case. We're a network. We have a lot of organizations that they're doing their own work in a big way. And then when it makes sense that some of their projects are around developing their own environmental research equipment or going out and doing research in public and using the data for advocacy, in those places of overlap, yes, Public Lab will work together with that organization. But we're stronger as a network versus becoming a singular thing.
Cool. So you mentioned that there are like policymakers involved in the public lab community as well. So has there been like policy change that was sort of caused by some citizen science effort and then discovering that we should have more or less regulation on certain things, that kind of stuff?
I do not believe that we have caused a policy change that I know of, but we have contributed our data into established government processes and changed the outcome. And by that, I can share one notable example from my hometown, New York City, where local researchers, homeowners who live near a polluted industrial canal that was once a tidal wetlands, they found themselves all of a sudden getting a lot of attention, because while this industrial canal and its famous pollution had been mostly managed locally by a city-level environmental organization, our Department of Environmental Protection, it was designated, all of a sudden, this site was designated as a federal pollution site, which under United States law has a term called Superfund, meaning that all the industries who had polluted it over time were going to be called upon to pay for cleaning it up. Superfund, a fund made out of many, many contributors. So now we have, some people in Brooklyn who are finding that the federal government is doing research on their backyards, essentially. And they said, well, we live here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We know which basements are flooding with groundwater. We remember what was here before these buildings were built. And the local neighborhood began a long-term, many-year process of aerial mapping and going out in canoes to actually check what was going on. This is a great example of collaboration because the locals were able to actually add and correct, in some cases, the environmental assessment maps that the contracted company had produced for the study. And by taking images over time, again and again, and even during a famous like kind of double pollution event after a hurricane and our sewage plants were down, and all that sewage nutrients were running into the water and the bacteria were just growing and dying so fast, the water had turned opaque white with the carcasses of bacteria. The locals actually said, hey, this is a great opportunity to actually show where there's fresh water still flowing into this polluted water body, something that the EPA and their corporate contractors had not actually identified. And so long story short, two kinds of citizen science came together, which was aerial mapping, which is, you know, a very small scale data, but taken at just the right time, combined with water sampling to actually test the bacterial counts. Both of those types of citizen collected data together created enough evidence that the EPA investigated and found a stream that was buried under a landfill. And because of this, a whole additional city block of tidal wetlands is going to be added to the restoration boundary in the middle of New York City. That was a bit of a long story, so thanks for listening to that. But in this way, I would say we didn't change the policy, but citizen data was an effective way for locals to go beyond complaining, to go beyond talking, to enter in discussion on a level playing field. We're in the age of data, and by bringing high quality, small and local data into like government management processes, that could be a really effective way for citizen voices to be heard.
So you also mentioned that you're also interested in those, like the peer-to-peer collaboration, like the Wikimedia model, and there's a whole new citizen science, this kind of way of collaboration. Where do you see this go next? What can this achieve and like make? What would this make the world look like?
This is a really exciting time as science itself is democratizing. And it's interesting as like peer production meets peer review. I think there's some, there have been some tensions with the institution of science as compared with like grassroots science. But more and more we are building those bridges. And the tools, the low-cost open source tools that are coming out of this peer-to-peer collaboration are being used by institutional science and institutional scientists. So that part is fine. But I think the next frontier is that, you know, we're going to see the same standards of like data transparency and open research publishing, not just of results, but of the models of how you got the results, to have this like spirit of openness actually infuse the original, you know, what the institution of science has evolved into. I think all of this is going to have an impact on how the environment is managed. And I know a lot of my examples are United States based, and I apologize for that. But it's where this particular project is starting. So let's see if we can apply it more widely. What we're learning here, though, is that, you know, in some cases, the only data that's acceptable for, you know, bringing down regulation, for like invoking government action, has to be collected by certain patented technologies. Okay, these technologies are patented. How are you ever going to take advantage of the fact that there are citizens living all over the environment who are observing important things that the government actually wants to regulate on, but the equipment costs tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the technical details on how it can be made are completely obscured from public knowledge. So if we talk about this, you know, the kind of being inspired by peer-to-peer collaboration, we can even start looking at how science is funded to do what. And can we also ask for, you know, publishing in open access journals? Can we say, all right, if government money is going to science, then the end technology isn't to be patented and then for those companies to get additional money to manufacture and produce a technology that only they can use. No, government money should go to create, to establish design standards, reference designs that many, many tools can be built off of, all of which can be understood in terms of how they work and the data quality they produce. And in that way, we're hoping to have policy impact.
Cool. So I suppose you've seen the draft agenda for the g0v Summit. Is there any particular session that sounds most interesting to you, you mostly want to attend?
Yes, actually, one of them that is actually scheduled at the exact same time as mine is.
Oops.
Well, because it's the one government times civil society times internet times deliberation. It's called Observations and Reflections of a Mediator.
Right.
I think this is critical. I mean, you've heard my interest in how like many types of expertise, many types of people with different kinds of expertise can actually come together and share across their silos. And while I think there's amazing projects happening in government, there's amazing projects happening in the civil sector, there's amazing projects happening in the private sector, where does it all come together? And I see that session as being run by someone who works as a mediator as really critical. And in general, I'm interested in all the sessions where I can meet people from, who are working in their countries and their regions about, how does social organization work where they're from? Like, what have been like previous traditional models of social organizing, and how in their area is that meeting this new internet-enabled collaboration? That's what I'm most fascinated in.
Yeah, we have a full track for that. Different stories from different countries doing like making an NGO using new technology and how this transformation is happening. So yeah,
awesome.
So yeah, we look forward to seeing you in May then.
Great, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited, and also to see my Chinese collaborators again from Green Innovation Hub.
Well, see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.